Happy Wednesday. It's time for Wednesday Wisdom. This week, I'm talking about taking responsibility for ourselves when we are triggered. So, we get triggered all the time, right? By different things. And maybe it doesn't happen as often if you've done a lot of, personal growth work. You know what you get triggered by mostly, and you know how to manage that when it comes around. But I think we can all get stuck in these places where when somebody does something and it triggers us, we want to blame that person, right? Um, it's just what happens. And I think it's partly because we have a really heavy blaming culture that we live in, at least in the United States. And I'm not sure entirely about the entire world, but I think that through the spread of global capitalism, there's probably some blame culture happening everywhere. Um, but, depending on what culture and country you come from, it may be a little different. But here, my experience has been that is the culture we live in. It's very blame oriented. Who's to blame? Um, so there's a couple pieces to that. Firstly, let's just talk about our own triggers and our own energies. So what I believe is happening when we're triggered and we want to blame somebody else is that trigger is bringing up or bringing like spotlighting some stuck energy in our system that really just wants to be released and set free. So when we turn to blaming that person, that doesn't really get to release, right? So it's not that anything is our fault, right? It's not our fault that things happen in life and energy gets stuck in our system, right? It's what happens through the course of being human. But I do believe that our human system is designed to get rid of that stuck energy. And I think that every time we do get triggered, there's an opportunity as well as a kind of like a little like bell that goes off to our energetic system that's like, hey, there's this opportunity to move this stuck energy, right? And so that's why we feel so triggered, right? That trigger kind of is pulling up that energy in us, and we feel compelled to do something. But that may often be like if someone's being a real jerk, right? We want to just blame them for being a jerk. And if we didn't have that trigger and that stuck energy, we wouldn't spend as much time on trying to blame that person for being a jerk. We may come up with some really beautiful response, or we may choose to ignore it. Like the trigger is what, gets us all kind of stuck. And I know we go like, oh, but we have to like stop people from doing things, and people shouldn't be doing this to me and they should be doing this to other people. That's all true. But I also believe that we're sort of always kind of bouncing off each other's energy. I mean, that's, sort of the nature of the universe, is that there's energy output and coming in. And so there is sort of a response to energy that might be stuck in us, and it's completely unaware, completely unaware by that other person and by us. And you would be surprised if your energy changes and moves and gets unstuck. Just how you handle triggers is really differently. And from my own life, from my own example, there are people in my life, and family's a really good one, because no matter how much you love your family, boy, they'll trigger you. Right? And so I have some big triggers, and I have done different things, right? I've done different things. I have, one of the ways I think we can release stuck energy is through emotional release, right? Like big emotions get stuck in our system, we release them. And I think of that not as the emotions, not as the hurt, but actually the releasing of a hurt or a releasing of stuck energy. I think a lot of people equate emotions with the hurt or the problem, but it's really, I believe it's the release of that. And so I've done a lot of that, from early childhood stuff, inner child work. You can move energy through working on shadows. That's a whole other thing. I think there's a video on shadow work. Last week it was about your light shadow and knowing how great you are. And then there's all kinds of things. There's tapping that I don't know much about, but there's lots of ways to move energy when we decide to take responsibility for ourselves and what's happening when we get triggered. So once that moves, what I have found is that I just have a totally different response. And usually a big one lately has been that I don't even have to respond, right? Like someone's going through something, they're doing their usual patterned behavior. And if my energy changes, then one, if something happens on their side, I won't even feel triggered anymore. I'll just be like, oh, they're going through their thing that they always do, right? Like that's theirs. I don't even have to respond to it. Or sometimes if my energy is different, that might not even come up anymore, right? Like I said, there's this way that our energy is always kind of bouncing off each other and looking to shift and move and release. And so there's a lot going on behind the scenes that I think we're really unaware of. And working with this energetic shifts in our own being, in our own system, really can move a lot. But we have to decide and take responsibility for that. It's not your fault. Again, this is not to blame, because I also believe that you're blameless, but who else's responsibility is it to care for your being, right? This is you, this is your being. And so you're the one who gets to care for it. You're the one who gets to take responsibility for moving stuck energy. And it's part of being human. It's part of who we are. I love to think of challenges and struggles as opportunities. I really believe that's what they are. And as much as we can take those opportunities, we really can live a freer, more flexible life. So I think the challenge for this week, or the question for this week, is what are some of the triggers in your life, things that happen kind of regularly that you haven't quite taken full responsibility for yet, you know? And this is something that I do in my coaching. This is one of the ways that a personal coach can really help you move through these things, because we're unaware of them. And if we sometimes don't have someone reflecting back what's actually going on, then we're just still stuck in that pattern of response. Yeah. And I also just want to say, if you have done your own personal growth and spiritual growth, then you have learned how to sort of manage, right? Like you may notice a trigger and know what happens in your own system and how to like not respond. And that's a great learning experience. And I feel like the energetic work around these things is like the next level of that. Going from sort of having to think about it and manage it to not even having that in your system anymore. It's kind of different and kind of a game changer. So, yeah. So where are the places that that's still happening, where blame comes into the picture, and it's sort of like you're taking it off of yourself and honestly missing an opportunity to grow and to shift and have something different happen around you. Yeah. So that's it for today's Wednesday Wisdom. As always, please comment on any insights or ahas that this might have brought up in your human energetic system. And I hope you have a beautiful day and a beautiful week. And I look forward to seeing you next time on Wednesday Wisdom. Peace and love.